Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Is paid parking going to play a role in solving the truck parking crisis? If new developments are any indication, maybe not. Truckers aren't buying what they're selling, at least not yet. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine joins Landline Now news anchor Scott Thompson for another edition of The Parking Zone. We spent a lot of time on the program talking about broker issues, and OOIDA gets calls daily about the topic, so we'd like to do a quick roundup of some of the topics involved. That includes carrier tracking, harassing phone calls, and more. I'll get some advice on that and more from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And finally, every week, we take a look at what's happening in the freight market and how it will affect you. And this week, there's good news. Rates are up 2 cents week over week. Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford talks with Brent Hutto from Truckstop, who says things are looking good for freight and for the market. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. A bipartisan bill to ensure that commercial drivers acquire only one CDL has passed the House and is headed to President Biden's desk. The Strengthening the Commercial Driver's License Information System Act was approved through a voice vote on the House floor on Monday. It previously passed the Senate in September. Introduced by Senator Gary Peters of Michigan, the bill would protect funding for the CDL information system, which ensures that commercial drivers have only one license and one complete driver record. Representative Rick Larson of Washington State spoke in support on the House floor before its passage on Monday.
This bill would make technical corrections to the Commercial Driver's License Information System, or CDLIS, to ensure the system continues to function as intended. CDLIS is a nationwide database that allows states to share information about commercial driver records. The system ensures commercial drivers are properly vetted with a single license and a complete record, which is critical for the safety of our roads. Absent this tool, commercial drivers could lose their license for safety violations in one state, but then simply apply for a license in a different state.
Until 2022, states paid fees directly to the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators to operate the system. However, a statutory review by FMCSA found that fees cannot legally go to that association. If signed into law, the Strengthening the Commercial Driver's License Information System Act would reinstate the previous funding structure. Faded or missing rear impact guard labels do not indicate a current compliance issue, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration said in new guidance issued this week. The clarification was issued in response to efforts by the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, and the American Trucking Associations. In answer to whether an illegible, incomplete, or missing rear impact guard certification label establishes a violation, FMCSA's guidance says no. Instead of focusing on the label, FMCSA said the condition of the rear impact guards should be inspected to ensure compliance with the safety requirements. The federal government is nearly doubling the number of available H-2B visas, which allow certain trucking companies to hire foreign truck drivers temporarily. The Department of Homeland Security is making an additional 64,000 H-2B visas available for fiscal year 2025, which runs through September of next year. That's on top of the 66,000 H-2B visas that Congress mandates each fiscal year. Under the program, U.S. employers can hire foreign workers to perform temporary non-agricultural work on a one-time seasonal peak load or intermittent basis. A wide variety of industries take advantage of that program, including hospitality, tourism, landscaping, seafood processing, and trucking. Diesel prices are expected to fall even further in the first quarter of 2025. In its most recent short-term energy outlook, the Energy Information Administration forecasts a drop in the national average to $3.46 a gallon to start the year. However, the reprieve might not last. EIA expects diesel prices to rise over the final three quarters from $3.52 in the second quarter to $3.75 per gallon by the end of 2025. U.S. Representative Brad Finstad of Minnesota says owner-operators pay the price when federal regulators put too many rules in place. Congressman Finstad introduced the Prove It Act, which passed the House last week. The idea is to give small businesses a seat at the table during the regulatory process and shield them from heavy-handed one-size-fits-all regulations. Congressman Finstad told Landline that requiring agencies to consider indirect regulatory costs when writing regulations would benefit everyone.
So every time we put more regulations on the trucking industry, for instance, I try to tell people in the simplest forms that, if it costs $100 more because of the regulatory climate to haul a truckload of chicken nuggets to McDonald's, well, that $100 is going to be pushed onto the consumer. And before you know it, it's going to be $10 for a 6-piece chicken McNugget meal because of all of the unnecessary costs that have been inflicted into that whole supply chain. And so we as government need to take into account that this might feel good, this might sound good, but there is the economic reality. And that economic reality is really strangling the average everyday American right now. And, the election, if anything, spoke loud and clear. The people spoke loud and clear that the economy is not working for everybody. And we have to take a look at any and everywhere that we can within our government to see where are we actually making it harder for our citizens to flourish. And the regulatory front seems to be like low-hanging fruit.
The Prove It Act awaits action in the Senate. If passed there, it would head to President Biden's desk for signature. The Justice Department says it will abide by a recent federal court order that struck down beneficial ownership information reporting requirements. In a statement, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, said in light of the order, companies are not currently required to file beneficial ownership information with FinCEN and are not subject to liability if they fail to do so, so long as the order remains in force. However, FinCEN said companies may continue to voluntarily submit beneficial ownership information reports should they choose. Before the court order, small businesses faced a deadline of January 1st to report that information. The new requirements were set up to prevent financial crimes that are often committed through shell companies. There will soon be one less robo-taxi company operating on U.S. streets. General Motors is shutting down its Cruise robo-taxi business. The company will instead focus on developing partially automated driver assist systems for personal vehicles. GM invested billions in a Cruise after acquiring it in 2016, but it never paid off. According to shareholder reports filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the robotaxi service accumulated more than $10 billion in operating losses while bringing in less than $500 million in revenue. This week's announcement also follows a series of incidents on U.S. roadways involving pedestrians and robotaxis, prompting safety concerns. And finally, a section of Interstate 471 between Cincinnati, Ohio and Newport, Kentucky that was damaged in a fire is set to fully reopen in March. That's according to the Ohio Department of Transportation. Work has already begun on a 70-foot section of the left wall of northbound I-471. Those repairs are expected to be completed later this month, which will allow all lanes of northbound I-471 to be reopened. More work will be needed to open the southbound lanes, which is expected to happen by early March. That's Lane Line Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Otis Parrish of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 57 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 428 years without causing a single accident. The OOIDA Safe Driving Award program is sponsored by Shell Rutella. And if you're interested in receiving the Safe Driving Award, you can find a link to more information at our website, landlinenow.com. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the Gasper's Truckstop in Kingdom City, Missouri. That's located at exit 148 on Interstate 70. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Do you have a news tip? Maybe you have a comment about something you heard on the air. Either way, email us at landlinenow@ooida.com. Next, Scott Thompson finds out what role paid parking could play in solving the parking crisis from Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. I'll cover some ongoing broker problems with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And Ashley Blackford gets an update on freight and rates from Brent Hutto of Truckstop. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit CapitalReman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news, good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark, and hello, Tyson. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for being here. You're always welcome here. We usually spend quite a bit of time talking about new truck parking on the state, the local level, sometimes the federal level. Sometimes we talk about NIMBYism, other setbacks with regard to truck parking. We're going to spend a little time today talking about paid parking in particular. And what kind of set this off was the OOIDA Foundation had a survey recently. A lot of interesting information came out of that, Tyson. Generally speaking, what we found out, truckers not really fans of paid parking, at least not right now. What stood out to you from this survey there from the foundation?
Man, there was a lot to unpack on this one.
Yeah.
So it's worth noting that as far as I know, this is the first survey on specifically paid parking when this question was asked. Which is good. We need this now because I think when we look back at truck parking for 2024, I think we can say that was probably the theme this year was paid parking. It's on the minds of everybody. That being said, I think the big takeaway here is that most truck drivers who were surveyed said that they do not use paid parking. That was a big takeaway, about 58%. So more than half, they're just not they're not taking advantage of that of that option. So the reasons that given were it's too expensive, which is what we would expect from that. But supplementing that is costs right now, operating costs are too high, rates are too low. You just can't justify that additional expense of truck parking when it used to be free. So that was it. And also, found this one interesting. Another reason why is because it's just based on principle. And with truckers calling paid parking ridiculous. That was, I like that one. So, which I can understand that. Sure. And we'll talk about some reasons why it is, and then some reasons why it is not. But back to this foundation survey. Those that do pay for parking, they don't do it all the time. It's usually about 5 or 6 times a month. On average, that's $18 a night. So, 5 to 6 times a month. That's about $100 a month is what, truckers are spending on truck parking. So $100 a month, $1,200 a year. That's not necessarily a small amount, especially when truck drivers, especially right now, are operating on pretty thin margins here, So, $100 a month, $1,200 a year. That can be significant for a lot of truck drivers. So, with that being said, most drivers are not getting reimbursed for paid parking. That's the other thing that this survey found.
Company drivers, leased on owner operators, not getting reimbursed.
Yeah, pretty much everybody. So when it comes to company drivers, they're the ones who are more likely to get paid for that parking, but that's only half. So it's a 50-50 chance as a company driver. Now, if you're an owner-operator, you're not getting paid that at all. Obviously, if you have your own authority, you're not getting that money back. But even lease on owner operators aren't getting reimbursed for that. So pretty much everyone's having to absorb that cost of paid parking. So, but it's more than just cost. So many of these pay to park lots, they're not conveniently located off the interstates. So these, truck parking entrepreneurs, they're buying up cheap land. That's part of the, business model here. So you got this cheap land, they're paving it, they're painting some lines, and they're charging truckers, calling it a truck parking lot. There's no food, there's no fuel, or there's no other amenities other than some security features. Just that's pretty standard. So these are secure spots. That's worth noting. So, I mean, the picture I'm trying to paint here is that this wouldn't be a problem if these paid lots were seen as a smaller part of the equation to solve the truck parking crisis. So it's just something that you would fall back on after you've exhausted all other of your truck parking options. Such as truck stops and rest areas. Unfortunately, I think many in the private sector, they see paid parking lots as the solution to the national truck parking crisis. And that, so over time, paid parking spots will outnumber the free spots that truckers are kind of used to, So, I mean, that's kind of like looking at further down the road, but at the rate by which the paid parking lots are being, added to the infrastructure, that's not a crazy thought,
Yeah, well, and especially if you consider the other takeaway from the survey, and we know this, we've heard this in other surveys as well, but I think about 6 in 10 of the people who responded said they have to shut down early because they're worried about finding a parking spot, losing about 9 driving hours each week due to that, trying to find a spot. So you would think that with that vacuum, paid parking might be part of the equation, as you kind of talked about there. And I think that that's how they're looking at this, right? I know you spoke with the CEO of the Truck Parking Club recently, and they're kind of looking at that issue. Obviously, they're looking at it as a business proposition, but they're looking at helping with the problem too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so, like I said, there is a significant role that paid parking will play in the trucking industry as a whole. So yeah, as you mentioned, the survey found that most drivers are shutting down earlier than they want to because they're worried about finding a parking spot. So they're losing about 9 hours a week is what the survey found. So, but yeah, so like during their annual conference, Women in Trucking, they hosted a truck parking panel discussion that included truck parking executives. And as you mentioned, Evan Shelley, CEO of Truck Parking Club, he stated the case that reserved paid parking actually saves drivers money over time. So here's the idea here. So instead of shutting down early to find a spot, having a reserved spot near your final destination for the day allows truckers to drive their maximum hours and the maximum miles. So by getting more miles in, drivers are saving time and fuel and therefore money by not driving around looking for a spot. So that's kind of the idea behind this idea that paid parking saves money over time. So it sounds antithetical, but I mean, it could make sense. So the way that Shelley kind of characterizes reserved paid parking is that it increases the efficiency of a truck driver's operations.
Yeah, it makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah, that's the idea here. And he also claims that according to internal surveys over at Truck Parking Club, truck drivers are saving on average $13.50 each time they pay for a spot through Truck Parking Club. So that savings is in time, fuel, and his quote is the efficiencies of getting further down the road. So, I mean, how exactly you quantify that, I'm not sure. But again, I think the overall logic, it does make sense how that could possibly work out,
That's a hard sell, though.
It is. It is a hard sell. And to his credit, he acknowledged that during this truck parking conference or panel. He said that, it does, this costs money, and it's kind of hard to, in a world where truck drivers are used to free parking. So, truck drivers who've been around a while, that's the only thing that they have now. So you park, you need a place to park, you go to a truck stop, you go to a rest area, that's free. The transaction here is that you pay, like at truck stops at least, if you park here, we'll give you a free parking spot, just pay money with fuel or, food and all that. That was the relationship, the business relationship between truckers and truck parking operators. That business model is shifting away to what we were talking about here, which is these reserved paid parking lots, which do not offer any of those amenities, most of them at least. There's no fuel, there's no food or showers or laundry or anything like that. So in addition to paying for something that was once free, they are not getting anything in return that they used to. And so I think that's where a lot of the pushback is on paid parking. But again, as Shelley pointed out, this is the new reality that we're living in. And since, it's difficult to find parking, if you want to boost the efficiency of your operations, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, paid parking, a reserve spot could be the route that you can go.
Yeah, and I guess that's where we can kind of end things here is looking at where we may be headed, because I know you think about this a lot and you keep track of everything that's going on out there. And you said earlier that 2024 was kind of the year that we saw paid parking kind of turn a corner here in terms of being, an idea that seems like it may be catching on among businesses and setting these places up. As we look forward here, what does that balance look like? Obviously, the Truck Parking and Safety Improvement Act, when it's reintroduced next year, could go a long way toward helping this problem. But it's going to be a mix, it would seem, of both paid parking and, what we're used to right now. I mean, what does it look like, I guess?
Yeah. It's going to be a mixture. The way that I see it, we're going to continue to see expansion of truck parking within the private sector. We need more public sector investments. The Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, I'm assuming is going to go for a fourth bite at the apple in the next session of Congress. That needs to get through. But also when it comes to the private sector, we're talking about that includes truck stops, traditional truck stops, which offer free parking. This comes down to the local government level. So some more advocacy at the local level, saying there's a lot of that NIMBY backlash. So what the industry can do is any truck drivers who live in an area where there might be a truck parking proposal, kind of speak out, kind of push back on that NIMBYism, explain the absolute need for truck parking, and the benefits to the local community, which is drivers spend money at the local communities they stop at. They absolutely do. So what we're going to see in 2025 remains to be seen, but hopefully we'll see a continue public sector investment that we have seen in the past year and a half with the current DOT. So we'll just see what the next DOT is going to do.
Well, and also what happens with these paid parking sites if it doesn't catch on, if the resistance is still there, it seems like there would have to be some sort of mindset change among truck drivers in particular.
Sure. If
they're going to, latch onto this. Obviously, if they're not, then these places will go away and then we're back to where we were before. We don't know what's going to happen, but
sure.
I guess we'll see.
Right.
Stay tuned for that one, I guess. Hey, one quick story here before we go to Connecticut, the DOT there. Speaking of statewide stuff, they're planning to expand truck parking there.
Yeah, so talking about public sector investment, Connecticut's got it going on right now. So they recently announced $31 million statewide truck parking expansion. Pretty much there's 5 key locations that they're focusing on. The first phase is already underway in Middletown rest area. That's off of Interstate 91 northbound. So that project will add 11 new truck parking spaces. So the goal here is by the end of the decade, is what they say, the Connecticut will add more than 180 new truck parking spaces. That's going to be in Middletown, Madison, Southington, Southbury, and Vernon. It's 180 spots. So this is where we get back to efficiencies, and this is where the private sector is like, we're better than the public sector. 6 years or maybe 5 years? 5 years. 5 years, less than 200 spots. That's not going to do it. It's just not going to do it. So, again, not going to lift a gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly,
glad that they're doing it. And they need to continue to do this.
Right.
This needs to be done. But this kind of highlights the problem. But at any rate, they're going to end up expanding parking by 44%. This is great. This is something that I think more states need to do. So I'm glad they're making this effort. And so, again, I don't want to lift that gift horse in the mouth. But it is progress. And any kind of progress, I will take it.
Yeah. I guess I can be the negative one here. It's like we're chasing our tail here. We're adding these spots here. Again, positive developments, but it's coming so slowly. We need a large-scale investment. Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. Hopefully in 2025, that will be the start of a new era with regard to truck parking. Tyson, whatever happens, you'll keep us updated, and we appreciate it as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That was Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. This is Landline Now, and we're back right after this.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibratechtvd.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Vendor choice. Owner-operators rejoice.
Truckdown.com.
Landline Now, welcome back. We spent a lot of time on the program over the years talking about broker issues, and OOIDA gets calls daily about the topic. So we'd like to do a quick roundup of some of the topics involved. Here was some advice and information on that and more are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark. Glad to be here.
Well, glad to have you, and this is kind of a little broker potpourri, which sounds like the worst potpourri in the world. That's not the stuff you want to put in your bathroom to make it smell better. Let's talk about one of the ones that I think has come up a lot, and I know I've noticed in notes from your department that it does. Carrier tracking. A lot of brokers are requiring this in their contracts. And why is this a problem in particular for the carriers?
Well, I mean, so they want tracking. They want to, the brokers want to keep track of exactly where the load is. Well, you would think that would alleviate check calls. No, it doesn't seem to alleviate check calls. They still want to do check calls. They still want to wake drivers up during their sleep time and get pissed off if they don't answer their phone and reply to them. And also the tracking issue, one of the biggest issues I have with it is that they fine you if the tracking fails or you lose service. Maybe your phone goes dead. Who knows? They want to fine you and throw out a $250, $400 fine, whatever. There's one broker out there in particular. I'd love to name them, but I know you wouldn't want me to. That has a 20% reduction of your rate if the tracking fails. And funny thing is, I think that broker causes that tracking to fail on occasion because, hey, it bumps their revenue up.
On occasion, it seems like every phone call I get fails. I can't say it's 100%, but I can say 100% of my phone calls, it fails.
Yep, I agree with you.
That would seem like something that if you documented enough, you could show a real problem there. But, showing the problem and getting anything out of it are two different things.
That is true. I mean, and we have looked at that, and, the problem is it's a single motor carrier it happens to here, a single motor carrier there, a single motor carrier there. And, motor carriers, when they're one-truck operations, tend to be independent, people that kind of they'll take it on the chin and just keep on going. And, if everybody said hell no, it wouldn't happen. But, as soon as one person says hell no, you got three other people coming up to undercut their business.
Well, and I think a big thing too, right, is this is privacy issues that these small carriers have, right? All our calls, privacy, they want your data. This is popularized, in 2024. Everything's a digital space nowadays. Your data is important and it's valuable.
Yeah, no, I agree. The ELD companies, I mean, the data that they get that they can bundle up, and I believe do. Some of them bundle that up and sell that data. You know how valuable that would be for a broker to know where all the trucks are?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah.
So that when you call in and you're trying to negotiate a rate, they already know where you're at. It's...
Yeah, there's 500 trucks up here. I was going to post this rate for this amount of dollars. Now I can post it for this because I know it's going to get taken.
Yeah.
They can dictate the rates. That's scary.
It is. And I tell folks when you're negotiating a rate, so you find a load that's going to take you home, right? You don't tell the broker, I really want this load because it's going to take me home, because he's going to try to lowball you then.
Oh, yeah.
But when they already have that information, I mean, it's, and if I recall correctly, back when the OOIDA was fighting the ELD mandate, and we fought it for a long time. I mean, without OOIDA fighting
kept it from happening for a long time.
Yeah, I think you would have had ELDs back in the early 2000s without OOIDA fighting it. But nevertheless, our biggest issue was privacy. Drivers' privacy, carriers' privacy, autonomy. Just everybody. If everybody knows all your bargaining chips, they're all on the table. Well, what do you got to bargain with? What do you got to leverage?
Well, and why do you think all these third-party vetting companies want your data too, right? It's valuable. They're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars getting their algorithms set up with AI, putting manpower and resources into this part of the business because this is where everything's going.
And Aaron, you mentioned AI. One of the first phone calls I got this morning was from a small motor carrier who, one of these vetting companies, they had told them, no, our AI says no. I mean, so people do not even make these determinations now. It goes through the algorithm, and you have all these things in place, or the AI just kicks you out and says, no, don't use this carrier. Just that simple.
Yeah, you're either flagged or you're not flagged. It's that simple.
That particularly strikes me as dangerous because we've already seen that the ability of an artificial intelligence to do anything depends on the information going in. And if that information isn't good, you could be knocked out for a reason that has nothing to do with you.
BS in, BS out. Yeah. And this particular individual, it was kicking him back on is because he has a physical address, which motor carriers are required to have a physical address on their MCS 150. Well, he also, because he's very rural, and he also has a P.O. box under his mailing address. And that one issue there, that P.O. box with the physical address, is what's kicking him back. And he's having a hard time getting loads because the AI is saying, hey, 2 different addresses, one's a P.O. box. This is a potential bad, scammer. And he's not, but and he's got many, many years of hauling for these same brokers that now won't load him because of this. I mean, that's another thing. You hear the brokers for so long, they would say, well, you got to have a good relationship with your brokers so that this fraud and all this crap doesn't happen. How's that good relationship benefiting you now?
Yeah, it's hard to develop a good relationship with the machine.
Yeah, and with folks on the other side of the table that don't play by the rules, that write their own rules, and there's no enforcement of the rules. Of course, that's another show.
Yeah.
Well, I'll speak on it right now because that's what I was going to talk about. This is an unpopular opinion with some, but I'll say it anyways. This is what you get when the feds have lackluster enforcement on the rules that are already in place and are late to the game. All these third-party vetting systems, this is a problem, and it's going to, and the problem's on the rise. And trust me, it's going to get worse, and it's going to accelerate in the upcoming years. I guarantee you that.
And I would agree with Aaron. It is something the feds, based on the way they do things, it made the industry ripe for this type of actions. And so you have private industry like these vetting companies that come in to try to, bridge the gap. But there's no regulation over these places. They just pretty much do what they want and, no consequences for it. The only consequences, the small carrier pays.
Yeah. And going along with what you said, Aaron, I mean, we've got a couple of problems there. Number one, government doesn't move quickly. Having worked my entire life in the private sector, I've dealt with government at times, and I always have to adjust my thinking to realize that I think in maybe days and they're thinking in years. They're not tech savvy. They aren't good at keeping up with the latest tech. And tech is moving faster than ever.
Yeah, it is. And, government is reactionary. They don't see things coming and get in the way of them. With all the fraud that's been in the last couple of years, I mean, they're still slow to act. If somebody calls me up and says they've been scammed, who do they tell? I mean, unfortunately, you tell the feds, you could tell them, but they're not going to do anything. They don't have any ability to go after some of these scammers. A lot of it comes from overseas, and every once in a while you'll see a write-up of a scammer that got caught. But compared to the thousands and thousands that are out there, it's just a drop in the bucket that get caught.
I want to go back to something that you said, Tom, a little while back, and I kind of want both of y'all's take on this, and that is you mentioned the harassing phone calls, that even though we've got all this tracking technology, that they're still calling carriers, sending messages like, why isn't the truck moving? Because they can tell if they're tracking you, and what are you doing right now, and so on and so forth. How big of a problem is this? I mean, it's always been a problem, but it seems to me that even with the tracking tech, it's actually gotten worse.
I believe it has gotten worse, and it is based on the fact that the broker can see if the truck's moving or not. And drivers are required, mandated by regulation, to take rest breaks, to take, certain off-duty periods. And when they're on their off-duty period, I mean, I'm not mad at them for not answering the phone. They're asleep. But, at the same time, this broker, well, you didn't answer the check call, so we're going to fine you. It's all about the dollar, and it's all about what the broker can keep and take away from the motor carrier.
Well, and I'm curious, you mentioned that, Tom, and guys, I mean, you are required to have 10 hours of not doing anything that benefits the motor carrier, even if you are the motor carrier. If you are answering these calls from brokers, does that technically disrupt your hours of service clock?
It's supposed to, whether or not you actively change to on-duty status because it's work-related is another, a whole nother separate issue. But yeah, it's supposed to.
If you look at the interpretations in the FMCSR, and I have read them many times in my 16 years here at OOIDA, many, many times, there is one that says a brief phone call interruption does not necessarily interrupt your rest period. But let me tell you, if I'm sleeping, and like as you get older, I only sleep for maybe 6.5 hours a night. It's not the best sleep I've ever had. But if during 3 hours into that sleep, I got to wake up and answer a call from a broker that's just being an ass and calling me while I'm sleeping, why is the truck moving? And I got to explain to him, I don't go back to sleep that easy. That can interfere with my rest period, and there just is no consideration from these brokers. I mean, and they get pissed off if you don't return their call. They get pissed off if you don't answer, and it all equates to, well, they're going to fine you for this and they're going to fine you for that. They got tracking on my truck. Why do they got to call me? Well, that's a question you'd have to ask the brokers.
Well, and keep in mind, if you kind of watch what Tom say, if you really listen there, he said brief. That's the key word to take from that. Most of the time, these phone calls are anything but brief.
Yeah, I can imagine.
What is brief classified as? 30 seconds, 2 minutes,
yeah, that's
10 minutes,
vague.
30 minutes?
But I don't know. If you wake me up halfway through my sleep cycle, my sleep time, I just don't, I'm not a switch. You can't just flip a switch and go back to sleep.
Yeah. Well, and, a lot of people complain about the fatigue problem, which I think is overblown in trucking, to be honest with you, looking at the actual federal statistics. But if you're concerned about that, why are you doing these things?
Yeah, no, that's true. And truth be known, the brokers, they're only concerned about themselves and their customers, and the motor carriers are just a vessel for them to, make money with. It's just, it is what it is. It's about the dollars.
Okay. Well, guys, it looks like we're running out of time. Is there anything else on this topic you think we need to get through to people?
The only thing I would like to say is, if everybody allows it to happen, it will. The only thing that will stop some of this stuff from happening is people saying, hell no, we're not going to do this. Otherwise, the brokers will take and take and take.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much. I certainly appreciate all the information.
Glad to be here, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark.
I've been talking with Aaron Lynch and Tom Crowley of OOIDA's Compliance Department about broker issues. And folks, if you have a problem or if you need help, call the Compliance Department at 816-229-5791. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truckstop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truckstop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. If you're hauling freight and running your own business, you need to keep track of some basic facts and figures that can determine whether you succeed or fail. And that includes finding the freight and how much money you can make hauling it. Today, Landline Now's Ashley Blackford will bring us some of that information and get some insight as to why things are happening with the folks from Truckstop.com. Here's Ashley now with a report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Brent Hutto with Truckstop. How are you doing today, Brent?
Well, Ashley, I'm doing really well, and I'm a lot warmer than usual. I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, right north of Miami, and enjoying some 80-degree weather and attending it's called TAPA, the Transported Assets Protection Association, which is where all of the people that live and breathe cargo security, which means, fraud mitigation, all these people down here, they're are really fundamentally in the middle of helping to solve the problems.
Wonderful. Well, let's kick things off as we normally do, looking at current market conditions. What do we got? What are things looking like?
Well, I tell you, it's funny. I'm not a big Morgan Wallen follower. I'm a fan of his music. I think he has pretty good music, but he had this cool song. It was out a few years ago, and I'm sure that people that know Morgan Wallen know it really well, called Up Down. He did with Florida Georgia Line or Florida or something like that. I think that's or is it Florida?
No, I think you had it right. Yeah, I think you had it right.
Yeah, Florida Georgia Line. Yeah. So, anyways, but and I love the song just because it goes up, down, like a bobber in the water. Like when I used to go fishing with my granddad. I was fishing for little brim on the sideline. He's fishing for bass, but I got watching a little bobber. But here's why I say all this: the market went way down because it always does during the holiday, and it went way back up after the holiday. So we just this last week, so just 7 days ago. The pressure in the marketplace went from a little bit below normal. It was about 40, and it went to way above normal, which is now it's about 80, which means there's just more activity in the marketplace, more things going on. Freight went from a little bit below normal to above normal in the marketplace, so it increased quite a bit, like week over week, like 22%, but it's just about 2% above the regular 5-year average. So if you're a trucker out there looking for freight, the marketplace is doing well as far as the amount of freight. And I realize rates, and that's going to be the next part of the conversation here, as we always like to talk about. Ashley, it's what are you getting paid? And so rates actually went up 2 cents week over week, which is really good. Had a big increase in the van marketplace of 5 cents to 207. Flatbed just went up 1 penny. Refrigerated, who had taken a big hit 2 weeks ago, went up 8 cents. So here's my point about the up down. This marketplace is going to do that as it continues to gain strength, because all marketplaces do. If you ever look at like a Wall Street, stock thing, it goes up and down and up and down. You just want to make sure it's kind of going up and to the right as it goes up and down, because all supply and demand marketplaces do that. The good thing, Ashley, the good news is that the outbound tender reject index, which is the contract marketplace, which is the dominance of this full truckload freight that we all love to haul and have our businesses around, it still stayed above 6%, which is good. That means more and more freight will continue to come into the spot market, which means owner-operators, whether you're van, flatbed, refrigerated, specialized, oversized, overdimensional, hot shot, whatever it is, you're going to have more choice, which is good. So we want it to stay above 5%, which means more freight will come into the spot market, which means rates will start to modulate up, which they're predicted to go up, from today all the way through next year, which is a good thing. So that's really good for owner-operators. So that's kind of, if you're just looking at market conditions, it's following normal patterns, and that's a good thing for all of us. And that we want it to follow normal patterns, but we want that kind of normal pattern to be to force it out of where the low rates we've had for a while up to normal rates. And then what I mean by normal, here's what I mean by normal. Just learned this from our chief economist. Didn't just learn it, but he talks about it all the time. Look, rates may look normal. Like the normal rate is about 220 if you look kind of historically in this marketplace. It's been around 230 to 240. But if you figure in inflation, it's a little bit below 220. So you got to figure in inflation and all these rates. And so you want the spot market rates for owner-operators to modulate back up to cost adjust for inflation, which hurts everybody across the board. So that's really what we're looking for, is rates to get back up above the inflation rate, which will probably be around the 240, 245 range, as long as fuel stays low where it has been.
What are some of the top regions and lanes from last week?
Well, everywhere for the most part. Load availability increased tremendously. As far as like year over year, it's up almost 20%. And that just means you get more choice out of this. And rates, like I said before, they're kind of moving back and forth anywhere from no gain to almost a 4% gain if you look in the Northeast. So just depending on where you're hauling. But the areas in which you want to look at are kind of a lot of the areas that you and I have been talking about. But I found one interesting in the van marketplace. Laredo to Atlanta, which is over 1,000-mile haul, went from 117 to 215. So it had a 25% increase. The point is you want to continue to look in these areas that the freight continues to be above average. Or if you're a trucker out there, just make sure that the lane that you're hauling is that there's more freight than trucks, because when there's more freight than trucks, you can negotiate, and you want to negotiate on every single one of them. Remember, when I say rates to anybody, those are the posted rates that are in the marketplace. You need to be negotiating for more every single time. So you use what's specific to you and what's valuable to your customer to say, hey, I deserve, or I request, or I think the marketplace will allow, 10 cents more, 15 cents more. That's just profit in your pocket. So please know to negotiate. They want to negotiate. They just want to get the freight moved. So you look at, that's for dry van, flatbed, same thing, a bunch of stuff out of Texas to Oklahoma City, to Denver, to Nashville. So the where the freight's originating from is kind of similar. Where it's going to is beginning to change. So just look for those things in the marketplaces. On the refrigerated side, you have a little bit the same thing at Texas to Baton Rouge, Texas to Nashville, Houston to New Orleans, kind of the same general areas. Anywhere from a 55% increase to a 41%. Now, these are specific lanes, all right? Sitting all the freight in that area, it's just specific lanes. But this is why I encourage every owner-operator, know how to look at your data, know how to look at your systems that you have. Take some time when you got some downtime. Start, how would I strategically search? What are some of the areas that I know they're going to be doing good depending on the time of the year? Know how to use the data to your advantage. So right there at your fingertips. The whole marketplace is right there at your fingertips. Just know how to use it. And if you need any help, we're always here to help, no matter what.
Now, I'm curious, when you encourage owner-operators to, negotiate, what do you say to them if they're thinking, well, I'm worried if I negotiate, they'll just tell me no completely, and they don't want to lose out on that load?
Well, no, I understand. Timing's everything. So understand. Here's the thing. So if I'm an owner-operator, when I'm working with, say, a first-time, or maybe it's somebody, a oldie and goodie that you've been working with a long time, you always want to know. This is something I learned from a broker that was communicating to an owner-operator, spot market carrier. Said if you're a carrier, I asked him, if you're a carrier, what's the thing that you want that carrier to ask you? And he said, well, I really want them to understand how I got the freight. Is it like just open market freight and it's competitive is crazy? Or is it spot market freight and it's competitive and it has to move fast? Or is it like friendship freight where I've got it, I'm the only broker on the account, and I've got a better margin in it? So if you'll just know, like, hey, what kind of freight is this? Is this like standard, like open market contract freight? Is it spot market freight? Is it like, is it relationship freight so if you'll ask that question, then you'll understand how you can negotiate. But I'd never be afraid of a piece of freight unless you just know it's a fantastic rate, and then take that rate. Because remember, the pigs get fat and the hogs get slaughtered. So you kind of always want to be a pig, so you can kind of keep moving forward. That's an old saying. That's an old Southern saying.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That was Brent Hutto with Truckstop. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.